Okay, and as folks are getting settled, a few other practical announcements. The first is that there are outlets located under your seat below the life preserver. With some frequency. So if you look underneath, there's a bar with both USB and three-prong outlets. I'll also say that all of the lecture materials will be linked on the agenda. There's a column on the far right. If you don't see the materials there, then they will be shortly forthcoming. And also a note to our presenters. Paul reminded me of this morning. This beautiful display actually is made of tissue paper, and if it is touched, it is remarkably able to break. So Alistair did a great job of demoing this today. You can get close, but don't touch. So great. Thanks, everyone. What's that? We had someone to tackle you if needed. Yeah. So yeah, we're grateful that Mia Trahan is here from NSF NCAR High Performance Computing to tell us about the Jupyter and Conda capabilities at NCAR. So Mia, take it away.
All right, can everyone hear me? Cool, awesome. All right, so just to like break the ice here real quick here, I really don't like, kind of, quiet, boring audiences. So if you have a question, right, anything that want to interrupt, right, please raise your hand, right? I'm more than happy to take them, right? Let's try to make this as like friendly and fun as possible. I know it's Monday and that stinks, but we're gonna have a good time here and let's learn a little bit about Jupyterhub and Conda. All right, so first thing, very, very, very important, documentation regarding all of the stuff I'm going to talk about today, right, including things regarding our HPC, if you ever find yourself on our HPC at a later point in time, can be found in this resource right here, right? So on arc.ncar.edu, right, there will be two little boxes here, right, docs and help. The help brings you to tickets where you can talk to me or anyone else that might be in the consulting at the time, right? Really friendly people. I really highly recommend it. And the documentation, we have another site that's actually brought up from that. You can go ahead and take a peek at that at a later point. But yeah, super cool. Yeah, great place to get some resources. Okay, so just to go over a few topics here. So first, I'm just going to give you a really, really, really brief introduction to what our HPC looks like. All right, I need to plug my HPC, so is what it is. But then we'll get into Jupyterhub and talk a little bit more about Conda. Okay, so just quick overview here, just a few slides. And yeah, if you have more information or you require more information, please feel free to check out our documentation or at ARC, right? Both have them. So yeah, feel free to hop on one of those websites. All right, so derecho. It's an HPC. It's got a lot of nodes. It's got a lot of compute capability, right? It is 19.87 petaflops. If you guys use Cheyenne, about 3.5 times the performance of Cheyenne. I won't go into the technical details here just because we're trying to save some time. But yeah, there's a ton here. And yeah, is this on? Okay, sorry. It was like, but yeah, I won't go over the technical details. You feel free to read them. Yeah. Then Casper. Casper is our data analysis and visualization cluster. It is a lot smaller and a lot more specialized for different tasks. This is a lot more of what we usually see regarding people like having kind of smaller workflows, or like they have a lot of really small kind of like jobs that they need to like go through. High throughput computing is what we call it. And yeah, I won't go over the details here either, right? You can read them, there's plenty, and they're all on our documentation too if you do want to take a peek at that. All right, so logging into Jupyterhub. I'm going to be doing an interactive component on this when we're all going to log in together at the very end. But just to give you a brief like kind of preview as to what we're looking at here, you're going to go to this website and it's going to tell you to sign in, right? You'll put in your NCAR username and your NCAR password, and then you will go ahead and get a duo push, and you'll accept that duo push. It'll bring you into the website. Okay, so just that's what we're going to hope it's going to look like later. But if it breaks, then is what it is. We'll come around and help you all. Okay. But once you're in, this panel is actually super important. A lot of people kind of ignore it. This panel allows you to basically start your kind of your session, right? So you go ahead and actually create a server, right, by pressing the little start button on the right. Once you do, right, if you actually come back to this page at a later point, it will say stop, and that'll actually stop your kind of instance there, right? I recommend doing this usually because, you know, if you don't, then you can effectively be running just kind of empty on the system, right? And be using parts of your account, right? Or parts of your allocation without like, you know, doing any work. And it's not really great, right? And generally it cleans up things and it saves a lot of issues for us later on too, right? Like a lot of the times we have users that like go, why are my jobs running? It's like having this weird issue where it's like telling me I'm having like too many jobs and I don't have a CO job, right? And it happens when they leave it up for way too long and the job gets what we call zombied. But yeah, remember to stop your server, and you can also set up like specific configurations with that little add new server button on the top. Okay, cool. So once you do log in, you'll get the option between 2 or 3 different types of kind of systems you could actually request. So the first one, and the one that we see the most usage for, is our Casper login. This is incredibly popular, right? Just because it's so easy to access. But be aware that it's like super limited on resources, right? You only get 1 core, 4 gigabytes of memory, right? It is pretty much only there for like kind of development work or like, you know, really, really small kind of tasks, right? If you're like writing code and use like the text editor or something, or like want to look at some images or like do a little bit like, you know, a little bit of analysis, right, regarding like some graphs or whatnot, right? Like that's a great place to do it. But yeah, don't do it for anything heavy because you'll regret it and then you'll be questioning why it's not working and it's not fun for anyone. Casper batch, and there's also a derecho option here, which we're going to be using later. The Casper batch is basically the exact same thing as login, except you can request specific resources. It brings you to this page on the right here, right, where you can go ahead and actually put in a queue or reservation or project account or basically anything you would get on a standard kind of HPC kind of system regarding like, you know, how you request things. We'll go over like a bit of this. We're not gonna go too much into detail regarding like job scheduling just because that's kind of out of scope of what we're trying to cover in this kind of session this week. But yeah, that's how you do it. You'll see it here in a bit. All right. And once you actually get in, then you'll see this nice little interface here. We actually provide a ton of different software and different like basic utilities for people to use just right off the bat. Yeah, you can see that we have MATLAB, Julia, NPL, or our NPL is our kind of custom Conda environment that people like using. Like it's like kind of like specially designed for a lot of NCAR scientists. Really popular. But yeah, you can also set up your own custom stuff here too, which we'll show later on when we actually get to the Conda environments. Okay. And just a really, really simple system map here for people that like don't really know what I'm kind of talking about regarding like Casper or derecho, right? So just like, I think this is crystal clear as possible, right? You're logging into a remote machine here, right? So you're on your like personal laptop and these little like arrows, right, connecting to the login nodes, right, are gonna be your internet access to those login nodes. And you'll go ahead and access those through a few like these 2 kind of like interfaces here, right? And you won't be doing this specifically today, I don't believe, regarding like shells, but if you were using a shell, you use that SSH command. Okay. But yeah, so we actually have these login nodes, right? These are actually VMs, so they're not really equipped with a lot of resources. So yeah, it's not particularly a good place to run things. It's very much similar to that Casper login thing I was telling you about earlier. Yeah, so really don't use anything for heavy compute there, right? If you are later on working on derecho, right, and you have a ton of like work you need to get done regarding like, I don't know, some CESM stuff, right, then you would use our more heavy kind of compute nodes in the back, right, using an actual job for it. Okay. So, any questions before I start scooching on? No? Okay, cool. Just want to make sure. And again, quick HPC summary here. Yeah, we have, like, I really tried to dumb this down as humanly possible to make this as quick as possible here, but you have 3 kind of major locations here for storage, right? So when you're on the system, you'll have 3 major places to put like files and whatnot, right? It's going to be in your home, your work, and your scratch. I didn't write how much each of these, right? But It varies. You can check the documentation for it specifically. But yeah, basically you can request how much you want in Scratch from, if you send a ticket to us. Work, I think, is 2 terabytes, and home, I think, is 100 gigabytes, but I'll need to double check on that just because my brain is not working this morning. And software, we provide it as modules, right? So if you've ever used an HPC before, there's a very distinct way that they usually handle things called modules, right? Just like separate out software. I didn't write down how we're actually going to access those just because, we're doing Jupyterhub, but yeah, if you ever do need to, you could go ahead and look up stuff about modules, and we have lots of different software available, including like compilers, MPI libraries, IO libraries, basic languages like Python and such. And lastly, a little bit about data transfers here. We highly recommend you do most data transfers on Globus if it's anything larger than like a gigabyte. So just FYI, like try to get yourself sorted with that if you ever do need to do that. Otherwise, you can feel free to use SEP, SFTP, like other kind of like Linux utilities to do it, or you can actually use Jupyterhub and just drag and drop. Super cool. Yeah, go for it.
See is on Scratch.
Oh, absolutely. So the first policy, so you don't know, on Scratch, we actually don't retain your data for more than 180 days. So on file creation, your files go ahead and get deleted after 180 days, right? So make sure that you get your data off Scratch, right? Before that ends up happening. We actually provide a lot longer of a period than regarding like most HPC centers. A lot of the times they like scrape it off for like 90, 60 days or something, right? But we have like, we offer quite a bit here just to like let people in. So yeah, please make sure you utilize that. Make sure that you clean your Scratch out. Make sure you back everything up. All these spaces except home are not backed up. So make sure you back up everything. Okay. Well, any other questions?
Maybe just a precision, it's not the date of creation, it's the last date of access of the file.
It was, yeah, creation. I'm pretty sure it's creation.
That's, well, okay.
Yeah. Want to make sure. All right, and you can actually access the modules here on the on the left-hand side here, sorry. Using that little tab there, you see the little blue box. That's like the icon for LMOD, which is our module management, right? You actually load in specific software here as well, right? And it'll like give you a big list and whatnot, right? And you just go ahead and like click and choose whichever one you'd want on Jupyterhub. Okay. Cool. All right. And to wrap out our HPC section here, yeah, be a good neighbor. Are your activities coexist with other people, right? So please make sure that you are, sharing these resources. They are like, generously afforded to us from, so we gotta make sure to actually share it out. Otherwise, compute is not going to be very fun for a lot of people. So, yeah, please make sure that you're, doing things correctly here. You're following kind of procedures, right? You limit your usage, so you're not like hogging up login nodes. You're not like, I don't know, causing issues in general. So, yeah, if you're mostly good here and just follow the list stuff actually listed on the slide, you should be good to go. But yeah, mainly it's the login nodes is a big one because we have a lot of people that do end up abusing that, and it causes a lot of issues. Okay. Cool. All right. So that's the fun part. Let's talk a little bit about Conda. So, just out of curiosity, how many people here use Conda before? Everyone. Okay. Why am I doing this talk? Yeah, this is gonna be really rudimentary, and so I apologize if it's, a lot of people already know this stuff, but yeah, we'll go and go over it just for people that do not know. So yeah, a package is basically a piece of software that you can install on this nice package manager called Conda. There's a ton of different utilities you can go ahead and actually install through it, right? So I'm sure people have used, NumPy or Dask or TensorFlow or all sorts of these things. Yeah, it's a very robust package manager and very popular nowadays, as you all could see. Yeah, pretty cool. It is, so one really nice thing about it is that it's very easy to do all these installations, right? So, usually you need a lot of like these packages, right, available to, get your work done in some sort of capacity, right? Like Python on base, right, never actually has everything you need in it, right? So you always need some sort of package, right? So, eventually, you know, you're going to go ahead and want to import matplotlib or something, or Dask, or whatever you end up needing, right? So pre-installed, it never really comes with everything. So, you know, we really, really want something that's like a consistent, easy way to do packages that doesn't collide all the time. So you might be asking, okay, cool, why don't we use pip? So pip is great. I love pip. It stinks if you're ever managing more than like one install. And I have had so many issues regarding collisions and whatnot regarding software, or things that just aren't, you know, what's the word for it? Sorry. Yeah, things that just don't mesh together, right? Like, you know, various packages don't have different versions, or, you know, dependencies don't end up working, right? And, you know, it's a whole mess. And pip isn't really designed for a lot of like, you know, out of Python packages too, right? So it might just throw you like an erroneous error saying, oh yeah, well, this version doesn't match, right? I don't know what to do about this, right? All sorts of stuff. It is incredibly annoying. This slide also doesn't mention it, but a lot of the installation locations are also like not well prefixed, right? Like you use these system library or user library kind of stuff, right? But like the specific path or prefix is actually noted in pip, right? So it's all sorts of kind of jumbled up, and I don't know, it's not a really, really amazing way to do it. So yeah, instead, we end up wanting to use Conda, and this is going to keep going on about how much pip stinks. So apologies about that, but yeah. Oh yeah, another big one here is package libraries installed using pip are typically not portable. So moving it from system to system is usually a pain in the butt because they all depend on system kind of dependencies, right? They don't do a lot of these installs by themselves. So yeah, it's not very great. Yeah, I won't go over too many details on it, but yeah. Basically, yeah, this is again more stuff regarding the user library and whatnot, right? So I think I jumped the gun regarding describing this stuff, but yeah, so there's a site library here, right? The site library is contained within Python itself, right? And you also has the user library that's installed in your other location here, right? So these two locations can collide a lot and have a lot of issues, right? So what ends up happening here is the Magic Conda will actually install Python itself in like its own little directory and do all these things in a nice conjoined package. It is incredibly nice, right? Because it installs all requested packages into a self-contained environment, right? Everything is like in that little specific little environment, right? And you can do a global Conda install, but who would do that, right? Like you want to use these environments as much as possible, right? And yeah, they handle so much, right? Like you can install like, you know, a variety of different software that's not just Python, right? But maybe R, or maybe like just some dependencies, right? Like MPL is in, or MPI is inside of a Conda, right? You can do all these installations that are super useful, just like get your kind of workflow going, right? It maximizes the environment portability too. So you can actually pass along a YAML file that I'll discuss later, and just like kind of give it to like, you know, different kind of scientists that you have in your lab. So yeah, it's really, really nice in terms of like how you'd actually handle it. It's so much better than pip. Highly recommend it. How you actually do it? There's two ways you actually do it on our systems. Usually I would recommend doing mini Conda, but nowadays our systems have gotten a lot more kind of, you know, comfortable. So nowadays I really recommend using this module load method on the right. So we have a system module called Conda, right? So you just do module load, or you can load it up on the sidebar. You wouldn't really use load up in the sidebar in Jupyterhub, but usually like if you're on like a terminal, right, you would go ahead and run module load Conda, and then it would bring up a Conda prompt, right? And it'll dynamically kind of set up your environment. So you just go ahead and use all the Conda commands without having any issues, right? You can go ahead and generate your own virtual environments, right? They'll get stored in your work directory. So you can go ahead and like, you know, fill that up as you need be. And yeah, it doesn't actually interfere with mini Conda too. Generally speaking, mini Conda more interfered or has issues like regarding, you know, specific configurations and whatnot that I've seen. So yeah, really, really recommend doing the module load method. If you're on your local machine, I actually recommend doing the mini Conda kind of stuff. I think the mini Conda stuff is like really, really comfortable unless you're trying to get like a specific kind of text editor or whatnot built into Conda. Like I feel like the full version of Conda is pretty heavy regarding the install. So usually I recommend the mini Conda install for local machines. Okay. Cool. So here's some commands that you'd use with Conda. So the module load conda, again, that's our key kind of command here for logging into this or loading up conda on the system, right? Like you can go ahead and, basically use all the commands that would be in conda, right? Like conda list, conda create, conda activate, right? There's a ton of different these commands and I won't go over all of them. But yeah, they'll have like basically it works very similar to like, how do I describe it? Docker, if people use Docker. Like there's like a prefix command, which is conda, and then you use a sub command after that. We also have this other utility called Mamba, which is a C kind of optimized version of conda. This is a really, really nice way to go ahead and actually speed up your conda installs because conda installs are actually quite long if you actually sat with them. So Mamba create, and then you could run that command there, right? And that would install Python 3.11. And then you could select the packages, Wharf Python, GeoCatComp, and -jobq. And that would install all those packages into your conda environment. Okay. But yeah, Mamba create, good way to do it. We'll go ahead and create that environment. Conda activate, this is how you actually activate your conda environments. Yeah, this will allow you to activate your kind of environment and load up all the software that you've installed into it. Usually how I like doing this is I will go ahead and create the environment first, and then I'll go ahead and activate it, and then I'll install whatever I want with conda install. But you could do everything up front too, as this command will go ahead and like show you here. And once you actually have everything all good to go in your conda environment, you can run Python, and then you can go ahead and do whatever kind of work you want to do. You can run your Python scripts. You could interactive. I don't know who would actually use interactive kind of Python just in the command line, but because it happens sometimes. But yeah, just a brief overview of the different commands. Does anyone have any questions regarding this? Yes.
Install it separately.
I believe so. On our systems, you don't need to, but on like a local machine, I believe you need to. So you need to get that information and all that. Any other questions? Yes. Yeah. Isn't that fun? You can just like recursively install something for conda in conda. It's great. Cool. Yeah.
And conda environments should work across most systems. So because they are so compartmentalized, right, since they install the dependencies in this nice little bundled kind of location in this environment, right, you can actually move a lot of this stuff over without having too many issues. Usually I like, I don't like moving over to entire directories. Usually I like getting something called a YAML file, which we'll go over in a bit here. And then I'd like to rebuild it from that just to make sure that there's no issues. But generally speaking, if you are like, working on Casper and Derecho and you have the same conda environment, you need to worry about installing two of them, right? Like you can just use the same environment. I will say there is an exception though, like if you have one on your Mac, right, which is an ARM-based computer, then it could have issues regarding doing this install here, right? So you'd want to do the reinstall on an ARM kind of system, right? So M1, M2 Max, even an older one, then that's not a huge deal. But if you're using like a Windows machine and you're not using ARM or anything, then you should be fine. Okay. Well, now that's great. Conda's cool. Everyone loves Conda. Now, how do we get it in Jupyterhub? So this is actually incredibly easy. So once you have your virtual environment, then you can go ahead and actually go and install this package here, right? So you see the Mamba install ipykernel, right? And this is a package that will go ahead and actually make a kernel for you in Conda, right? It'll go into a specific default kind of a directory, right? So you don't need to do anything fancy regarding how it's actually set up, especially in our system, right? But yeah, you run Mamba install ipykernel, right? That'll go ahead and then once you actually load up your Jupyterhub install, right, then you'll go ahead and be able to see your conda environment actually pop up. And I'll go ahead and actually pull that up on my machine here in a second. But yeah, you'll actually see a nice little box pop up where you can actually just like select whichever kind of like kernel you want, right? Really, really cool. Okay. Cool. Any questions about that?
Okay. All right, and
this is the YAML stuff that I'm talking about. So sharing an environment. Yeah, there's actually no, this isn't what I'm talking about. Never mind. This is instead sharing an environment between different users, right? Or sharing different kernels between different users. Yeah, basically you can access a user's environment on the command line really, really easily just by actually running conda activate, right? And then actually selecting the path where their conda environment is. It's incredibly cool, right? So if you ever need to like, say you have a colleague, right, that has a really, really custom conda environment, right? And they're like, oh, I love it, right? And you want to give it a shot, right? You just select the directory of wherever the environment is, run conda activate, and you're good to go, right? You need to have read permissions, but it's really, really nice. And, be aware though, if they add stuff, remove stuff, then you might be a little annoyed, but yeah, just make sure, keep track of it. So IPy kernels are only visible to environment owners. You can run this command here, create conda kernel, which allows you to actually, allows others to see these conda kernels from, that you can actually activate as well. So here's the command for that. You would run, so module load NCAR env conda, right? Then you would activate your environment and then you'd run create conda kernel -n and then you put a name in, right? And it'll go ahead and create a kernel that points inside your actual environment. So you can go ahead and actually let other people access that. Okay, yes.
And also an ARM machine.
Uh,
You mentioned like the Macs M1, M2. I just hadn't.
oh yeah, no, I think that's previous slide, yeah, so back over here, right, this is only for like, on our system really, right, you wouldn't
Have these module commands on your local machine or whatnot, right? So, you can be able to do that, right? But yeah, if you're sharing on our system specifically, then you can go ahead and run this command and share kernels, right, on Jupyterhub, right? You all are working collaboratively on NCAR systems. Okay, sorry, it's not really like it's not as fun if you're all kind of like, I don't know, trying to spread, pass along an environment on like, your all individual kind of computers. Instead, you'd want to go ahead and follow this instead, which is, I'll scooch past that. This reproducing environments anywhere with YAML files. This is how you share things locally. I've done this many, many times. If you use this conda env export, right, you can actually export your entire list of packages in a nice YAML file and pass that YAML file to another user or another friend or colleague or whatever, right? And they can go ahead and actually run this mamba env create command here, right, to go ahead and generate the exact same environment, right? Well, I guess there could be some discrepancies if you're not specifying your version specifically, or like if a package ends up like getting kind of wonky in the back end because it's been 3 years or something, right? But generally speaking, this should create an exact replica. Okay, cool. Get over some slides there, but yeah, that's what you would end up doing on your local machines. Yeah, thank you so much for the question. Any other questions before
I'll move over to extensions. Awesome.
So Jupyter extensions. Extensions are an easy way to add on like little cool features regarding your Jupyter install. These work very easily on our machine as well as your install, right? So if you had a local install of Jupyterhub, right, and you do these installs, right, you could go down, the list in terms of things that you'd want to install. You could just go crazy, right? On our machine, right, you would think that it would have some issues like, well, would this mess up like the system Jupyterhub or something? No, it's actually all installed locally on your kind of like your user space, right? So you don't need to worry too much about anything actually interacting with other people. You just need to click that little puzzle button, right? You can see a list of all things that are installed, as well as things on the bottom, which will be like things you can add on if you'd want to. I don't actually really recommend installing things to this little browser though. Usually I like doing it through the terminal just because you have a lot more information regarding how the install happened, right? Like if you click that little install button on the very bottom there, right? Like you don't get much information. It just says, oh yeah, installed, cool. But me personally, I like loading up a terminal session in Jupyterhub and then running a few commands to go ahead and do the install. Okay, on the command line, it looks like that. It's pip install and then -- user with your Jupyterhub extension. Okay, cool. And we're going to be having a little practice at the very end, so don't worry, it'll be fun. And yeah, if you need to do a little bit of configuration regarding how Conda operates and how it all functions, you can actually do so through these Conda file, right? This Conda arc. So this is inside your home directory, right? You can actually go ahead and, edit this file and actually change specific features of Conda. I'll go over a few of them here regarding things that you might want to add or remove. The big one is the channels one. So channels is basically a location where your packages are like found and searched from right by default. Conda Forge is the one you usually want to go with. I wouldn't want to go with just base Conda, right? Usually I want to make sure I add that in there every single time, right? This is in your home directory, right? This Conda arc directory, right? Yeah, it's a good way to actually do that. This is the default one, but yeah, you definitely want to get this one installed in your home directory when you do get that kind of sorted out. There's also another one, default threads on our machine. You can end up having a few issues regarding compute, right, where things get throttled out and, you know, might get a warning email or something, right, regarding trying to do a bunch of installs, right, and that's not very fun. So default thread set to 2. If you set that to 2, then I don't think that'll ever happen. Yeah, it just limits how much compute your actual kind of process or your install is actually gonna end up using. So that's a nice one to have. And the biggest ones that I think cause so many issues regarding, you know, issues in the system or whatnot, right? And I really am thankful this is default. So these package directory and environment directory. So how Conda actually functions in the back end is they will go ahead and then grab a bunch of packages and cache them, right? So in case you want to do another install. And when they're cached, they're actually installed in this this packages directory. And by default, this is in your home directory. And that is an incredibly annoying kind of situation because like if you're on a machine that doesn't have much like space in your home directory for whatever which reason, right, then it causes all sorts of issues regarding like configuration or whatnot. But yeah, always setting this is a good idea because you always know where this cache directory is. You always know if you want to dump it or whatnot. It's really easy to dump it. You could just go ahead and, you know, remove the files there. But yeah, that's a good utility. So make sure that you recognize the package directory. And the last one here, this envs directory, this is where all your environments are actually stored. So if you have a specific place you want to actually do your installs, right? So say your environment, and you want like an environment, I don't know, in your scratch directory. So you only want to use it for like 30, 90 days or something, right? And you always want to make sure you're rebuilding it or something, right? You could set that in your environment directory as well, right? And, you know, you can change that however you'd want to see. You see there's actually multiple environment directories here in terms of where to actually search whenever you do Conda activate. I think the first one's always the default install location though. So, or actually no, maybe it's the second one. I think it's the second one. But yeah, yes.
So when you set automatic select by default.
What was your question?
Which environment does it select by default if you set activate base false?
Activate base false.
Auto activate base.
So I believe what ends up happening is it just loads up. So it's like a base Conda environment,
right? I think that just loads up the Conda commands, right? So just all the Conda commands, but it doesn't actually activate the specific packages regarding Python, right? And all the little, like, you know, things that you could load in at the very top level of your Conda install, right? Like Conda is really portable, right? But at the same time, right, like you could do like top level kind of installs in your Conda environment, right? So that activate base, say that, you know, you have like a thing that's like causing it to conflict in some sort of strange way, right? Like you could set that default and you could set that to true, right? And I don't know. It apologies. I'm like trying to, yeah, parse out a good way to like phrase this, but yeah, this auto activate base, yeah, you basically just don't want to make sure it's set to false right now. So, you know, it doesn't have any like weird conflicts regarding like your top level kind of Conda environment, specifically on our machine. You could set it to be true if you wanted to on your local machine if you don't really care about different environments. But yeah, those are the chunks here regarding Conda arc. Anyone have any other questions?
Awesome.
All right. You can also do some tracking. Conda has an undo feature. I have never actually used this surprisingly, but it does have a nice undo feature here, right? You can pull up your list of revisions here, right? Using Conda list, and you can go ahead and pull those out, right? And then you can do Conda undo. I don't know. I don't remember the command, but there is a way to actually undo and unravel a few of those, right? Yeah. These are all listed inside a history file, right? It's actually located inside your prefix, right? So wherever the actual install is, and yeah, you can go ahead and actually take a peek at that if you ever do need to make some changes, right? Or need to pull up your history here. Okay. Oh, key thing here, it doesn't record the specific user, so if you're on our machine, it is not super helpful, but you know, that's our machine. It's if you're on your local machine, it's like pretty nice because, you know. Yes.
I think that, I'm pretty sure that's, oof, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I would assume,
That the Mamba commands are all stored separately, but I could not tell you. I apologies. That one I'm completely unaware of.
You have to use conda activate. You can't use member activate. Other things you can use member.
yeah, that makes, it'd be really nice when everyone knows content.
Yeah, another thing that I want to point out here regarding our system specifically, our NPL environment, we provide a bunch of different packages, right, for users just to load up by default. Yeah, we update this twice a year. So I think if you check currently, we're on 2025-B, or not dash B, it's just 2025-B, right? You load that up. Yeah, we keep this logged out though, so if you do have like a specific one you want, you can go ahead and pull it out. But yeah, these are the ones that we provide, or the ones that are listed right in the slides. They're all updated to the current year right now though. Okay, if you want to see any of these, you can run conda list, and you can see all the our conda env list, right? And if you want to see the things inside them, you can run conda list -n with the environment name, and you can go ahead and pull out all the information there. Okay. Cool.
Lastly,
General recommendations for using conda, and I'm glad I kept this short so we can keep like as interactive as possible here later on. So avoid using pip to install Python packages. This is going to be very ironic soon. I apologize for that, but packages are always available on CondaForge. Usually the way I want to do this, right, if ever doing conda installs, is I will start from the very top of like, you know, conda installs, right? And if I'm like desperate and I need like a pip package, right, that's not available on conda, because I don't know what conda is or whatever, right, then I'll save it for the very, very end, right? And like it's not tracked, right, as what like, so it's a kind of problematic regarding doing the install, right? So I'd be really, really careful about doing the pip stuff, right? Usually save it for the very end at the very least. Okay. Don't really, you want to really keep to using one channel. If you mix these, they can tend to lead to fragile environments, right? So usually stick with CondaForge, right? If you really want to stick with the normal default Conda, that's fine, but usually stick with the CondaForge channel. You can select it on the command line too with -C CondaForge, but and usually use Mamba instead of Conda to install installation or to solve installations. Like if you're doing it a really big, like, okay, so this is a little dramatic, right? On our HPC, right, it could take days because we have a ton of different packages we end up like wanting to resolve, right? And I've had an instance, right, where I was sitting there like trying to do a user install that took about 2.5 hours regarding trying to solve it because it couldn't figure out which packages would go where. So you try to use Mamba, it is going to save you a ton of time, right? So usually try to stick with that regarding installations. And this is also ironic because we're going to be doing this in a minute. Avoid pip user installs. These are still accessible in Conda environments and can break, they cause issues regarding your notebooks in Jupyterhub. Don't worry about today because it's a kind of a mild package for installing, right? And I don't know the specifics regarding the next environment you guys are going to be installing later. So we're just going to do this in a global kind of sense here, right? We'll go over that in just a minute. Okay. Cool. And getting help. If you're interested in any of this stuff, right? Interested in anything regarding HPC, feel free to ping us over at help. We are always friendly. We're always willing to talk to you. So please feel free to. Our documentation page, again, super nice. Also, I didn't plug our virtual consulting. I'll plug that at, I guess, the end if you do have any more questions regarding it. But we do have a virtual consulting option. It is listed in the docs. Once you go to the home page, you can actually like click select an appointment and you should be good to go. But yep. And thanks. That is
the first part of it, the last part's the interactive portion, but yeah, thanks so much. And I will take questions now before we move on to the actual logging in. Any questions? Yeah, pretty simple, right?
well. All right. Well, let's go ahead and log in. I am going to do it first, right? So everyone can see the process that we're all gonna do, right? But this is the information you're gonna end up needing, right? Today we're using Derecho to do our resource selection, right? So please select Derecho on the top of that, right? You'll select tutorial and the queues and reservation here, right? So you shall have access to that. And specify 10 gigabytes of memory and use the account CESM 0030 in order to actually get an allocation or use the allocation. Okay. Cool. Go ahead and shift over to Jupyterhub. So URL for this is jupyterhub.hpc.ucar.edu, or you can just search NCAR Jupyterhub and you should be able to find it. Oh, what was that?
I was struggling to find the tutorial reservation. Only Casper badge. Yeah, well, at least for me.
It only has mentions.
Yes.
Give me 1 second here. I'll need to see myself here because I should be in this. I might not be, but if it's in Casper Batch, I guess we could try Casper Batch. It doesn't really matter which one you select today, but the one I was told was set up should be Derecho. Okay, once I'm logged in here. I will go ahead and start a Derecho session here. So I'm gonna press start here, bring up a new tab, and you see this Casper login. I'll go ahead and select that. I'll click Derecho. And you will have your own account here, right? This will have a little drop down you'll go down to. And then you can go ahead and specify your reservation here. I don't have a reservation because I'm not on your account, but you should be able to load that up. If not, then please let me know and we will dig around and see how it goes. I'm gonna start walking around